I was a broke schoolteacher when I discovered my grandfather was secretly stealing from me and my siblings for years, using my dead father's company to fund his ego. So, I did what any good son would do. I took back everything he stole, and made him watch me do it. If you've ever tasted the sweetness of justice after being betrayed by family, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe legacy should be protected, not stolen, and let me know in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Now buckle up. This one's personal. My dad was the kind of man who made you believe in heroes. He didn't wear a cape, but he might as well have. He worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs while studying law, built businesses from scratch with his best friends, and somehow still found time to be the best father you could imagine. He was the glue holding our family together. A provider, a protector, and a quiet kind of genius. I remember watching him sketch out business plans on napkins at the dinner table while rocking my baby brother to sleep in his other arm. Then one day everything shattered. He was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer, the kind you don't recover from. I was just a kid. Too young to understand death, but old enough to recognize when something beautiful was being ripped away from me. In his final days, my once strong father became a whisper of himself. Tubes ran in and out of his body like a machine more than a man. His memory faded. Doctors told us he wouldn't remember us soon. But the last time I saw him, he looked at me and smiled. Weak but unmistakable. He still knew me. That smile was his last gift. After he passed, my mother was left with 3 kids and no income. She'd been a housewife her whole life, and now the world expected her to survive on grief and goodwill. That's when my grandfather stepped in. Now don't get the wrong idea. This wasn't some heartfelt, family-saving gesture. My grandfather, the classic, self-absorbed boomer, wasn't helping out of love. He was performing. He offered to help manage my father's 2 businesses. Said he'd use the profits to help us get through school and survive. My mother, desperate and inexperienced, agreed. For years we struggled. My mom took job after job, barely keeping food on the table. My siblings and I shared clothes, skipped extracurriculars, and pinched every penny. And yet, every time my grandfather graced us with help, he made it sound like he was giving us a kidney. What we didn't know was that this man, our own blood, was bleeding the companies dry. I found out the truth when I was a full-grown adult, working as a high school teacher. I was juggling classes, private tutoring, and side gigs just to support my siblings, both of whom were in medical school. Then one of my dad's old business partners reached out. He said, "There's something you need to see." He showed me the books, the accounts, the ledgers. Turns out those companies weren't failing at all. They were making solid profits. But guess who was siphoning off the majority of it? Yep, my grandfather. He'd been collecting the money meant for my family, me, my mother, my siblings, and pocketing it while we scraped by. He even took over one of the company's prime office spaces and started renting it out to a competitor, using the lease to enrich himself while the original company operated out of a budget basement suite. All this time, we thought he was helping. But he wasn't a savior. He was a parasite. Worse, when my siblings' careers didn't align with his backward, misogynistic worldview, he cut them off entirely. My sister wanted to become a doctor, and this man, my grandfather, looked her in the eye and said, "Why are you wasting your time? You're just going to have children and quit." That was the final crack. This wasn't just theft. This was legacy vandalism. My dad built those companies for his family, for our future. And this arrogant old man was using them to puff up his pride and polish his fake reputation. I decided right then, I wasn't going to let my father's legacy rot in the hands of someone who never appreciated it. It was time for revenge. But not loud, not messy. This revenge would be slow, precise, and poetic. I dug into every legal document I could find. Ownership papers, shareholder agreements, estate declarations. It took weeks of late-night coffee and early morning calls, but finally, I found my leverage. You see, my grandfather never legally owned those shares. He was simply acting as a representative of my father's estate. In other words, the power to decide who represented those shares? That belonged to me, my siblings, and my mother. We signed a joint declaration making me the sole representative. I wasn't a business expert, but I didn't need to be. I just needed the truth and the law. Then I scheduled a quiet meeting with every board member, without my grandfather. I presented the documents. I showed them the proof of siphoning, the shady leases, the misuse of company assets. And then I said it. According to the bylaws, the chairman of the board represents the largest shareholder. That's no longer my grandfather. It's me. They agreed. The next board meeting was scheduled as normal. My grandfather, still oblivious, walked in expecting business as usual. What he found was the conference room already filled. The board seated. The chairman's chair turned away from the table. He stopped. And I turned the chair around. I looked him dead in the eyes. Calm. Collected. Every nerve in my body was on fire, but my voice was steady. You're no longer needed. The estate you represented has chosen someone else. He blinked. Do you know I paid for their education? He stammered. I didn't flinch. No. Dad did. The silence that followed was deafening. He didn't say another word. Just stood there, pale and shaking as the truth unraveled in front of him. For the first time in my life he looked small, powerless, exactly the way he had made us feel for years. I didn't stay chairman. I didn't want power, I wanted justice. So I stepped down and took a job in the Treasury Department. Low pay, long hours. But every cent of profit from the company now went to where my dad wanted it to go. His family. One of my final acts as board member? Hiring my mom full-time. The woman who stood by my dad's side through everything, finally earning a steady paycheck from the empire they built together. My grandfather? Unemployed. Bitter. Alone. No more office space to brag about. No more checks to cash. Even my grandmother, sick of his pride and cruelty, refuses to share a room with him anymore. Now he sits alone in his house, surrounded by trophies of a life built on lies. He spent decades demanding respect, without giving any. And in the end he lost everything. Some legacies are built in boardrooms. Others are built in moments, late nights, whispered goodbyes, quiet smiles. My father left us more than money. He left us integrity and love. I just made sure those things didn't get stolen too. If you made it this far, thank you. Justice like this isn't always loud, but it's powerful. Smash that like button if you believe respect should be earned, not inherited. Subscribe for more stories of real-life revenge and poetic payback. And tell me in the comments, what's one act of karma you'll never forget?